Tech and clips.
Yeah. So at some point, Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney, kind of like had this, should I say beef or rift? And I just didn't know why, So, this video was sent to me, and hopefully, it will give me personally reasons why they sort of had what they had going on. Title: Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney hated each other, but here's why, the detail. Yeah, super excited for this one, man. So stick with me, let's watch it, and I'll definitely give my take, my perspective at the end. Let's go.
Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. The two recorded several duets together in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
Among them included the chart-topping Say, Say, Say and The Girl Is Mine.
Yeah.
The latter being the first of a string of hits Jackson achieved with the commercial juggernaut Thriller album. The Girl Is Mine chronicles a playful exchange between the former Beatle and the new Peter Pan of pop.
Okay.
A make-believe rivalry between the two pop stars over the affections of a girl. 3 years later, McCartney and Jackson would lock horns in a real-life battle, but not over a girl. Music brought McCartney and Jackson together, but it also tore them apart. When in 1985, Jackson purchased the contentious ATV catalog,
so that's like, what brought me to this video. At some point, I heard that Michael Jackson, actually owned the Beatles catalog, and I wonder how he was able to do that. Maybe this video will be able to explain that. Yeah, but that is enough. That is enough to actually want to go at it with somebody, because they own you, they own your catalog, they own everything that you have ever worked for, so kind of like understandable if you ask me.
Included the publishing rights for nearly all of the Beatles' hits.
Yeah.
When once Jackson was McCartney's protege, in which he took under his wing, now he was the icon's publisher and architect of McCartney's own musical legacy. This is the story of the two pop icons' initial connection and musical alliance, and how it soon grew sour after the major acquisition had the two feuded publicly over several uses of the Beatles' music, money, and ultimate control over the catalog.
Okay.
The background.
Okay.
The two originally met in the late 1970s after Michael Jackson recorded McCartney's track, Girlfriend. McCartney thought of Girlfriend as a song that Michael Jackson might like to record, and mentioned this to Jackson at a party in Hollywood. Jackson had stated in interviews with the music press that he was a fan of the Beatles, and the chance to record a McCartney original helped inspire him to record more solo tracks.
Nice.
However, before Jackson was able to release the track, McCartney ended up recording it himself with his band Wings, and it was issued in 1978 on the album London Town. When Michael Jackson's producer Quincy Jones heard the song, he suggested it as a possible track for Jackson to record, not yet aware that the song had been written for Jackson in the first place. As a result, the song was included as part of Jackson's 1979 solo breakthrough, Off the Wall.
I've never heard that song though.
In 1981, Michael Jackson decided to collaborate with Paul McCartney again, writing and recording several songs together. Recording in London, Jackson stayed at the home of McCartney and his wife Linda, becoming friendly with both. The two spent several days at the famed Abbey Road studios. Most days, the two would throw ideas back and forth while Paul sat at the piano. Michael usually ate dinner at Paul's house, a Tudor-styled residence on nearly 1,000 acres, an hour's drive from the heart of London. McCartney would later go on record to say that one of the conversations he had with Jackson was how a musician could actually make a lot of money.
Yeah.
One night, Paul showed Michael a thick, bound notebook filled with song titles he had bought. Michael, never one to hide his emotions, became more excited as he turned the pages. Since the Beatles broke up in 1970, McCartney had become a major music publisher himself by buying the rights to hundreds of songs, including such standards as Autumn Leaves, Sentimental Journey, and Stormy Weather, as well as all the songs by Buddy Holly. Paul McCartney learned that music publishing could potentially be a goldmine the hard way when he and John Lennon lost their own copyrights for the Beatles' music. While facing tax problems in Britain in the 1960s, and in order to avoid paying 90% on their earnings, they were advised to sell their publishing rights outright or form a public corporation to deflect the tax burden. So, they established Northern Songs Ltd. And then took the company public in 1967, with shares trading on the London Stock Exchange. A large factor in the Beatles' breakup was when their publisher Dick James sold his share of Northern Songs to Britain's Associated Television, ATV, in 1969. Neither the Beatles nor their managers were able to prevent this, meaning that they lost control of the company and thus control over their own copyrights. After the Beatles' example, the rule for songwriters became never sell your publishing, explained Marshall Gelfand, showbiz accountant and business manager. Quote, "You've got to remember that when the Beatles started, nobody in this business owned their own publishing. It wasn't until the mid-60s when artists like Bob Dylan and the Beatles started recording their own songs and selling millions of albums. Then advisors began to understand the importance of holding on to your own publishing."
Yeah.
However, one common misconception about the Beatles' music is that McCartney and the Lennon estate no longer collect royalties on their songs. They, in fact, split the songwriting revenue with the publisher. The Lennon estate and McCartney, as co-writers, divide about 50% of that income, and then the publisher collects the other 50%. However, the publisher normally controls the use of songs in films, commercials, and stage productions,
That's true.
meaning that McCartney as an individual had very little say on how the Beatles' music could be used in future projects and therefore lacked any kind of control over his and the group's ongoing legacy. Michael Jackson wrote in his 1988 autobiography Moonwalk, "Paul and I had both learned the hard way about business and the importance of publishing and royalties and the dignity of songwriting." The deal. Soon after, Michael Jackson met with his attorney John Branca and told him, "I want to buy some copyrights like Paul." And over the next 3 years, he bought several collections of music publishing rights.
Wow.
At first, he only wanted songs that meant a lot to him, so he declined to bid on all but 3 of the 40 catalogs presented to him over this period, costing Michael less than $1 million. But when Michael Jackson's next LP, Thriller, skyrocketed the artist to new heights and became the best-selling album of all time, the success significantly boosted Jackson's own personal wealth. And by 1985, Jackson had reportedly earned more than $50 million from music royalties alone. With checks piling in, Jackson instructed Branca to find more large-scale investments for his newfound fortune. But by the beginning of 1984, Jackson was engulfed in setting up the Jacksons' Victory Tour, and the matter of catalogs had faded into the background until a September meeting with John Branca in Philadelphia. In this meeting, Branca told Michael that the infamous ATV catalog had become available and asked whether he would be interested. Upon hearing this, Jackson did a full turn, jumped in the air, and shrieked, "I want it! Please!" Michael set out strictly to buy the music copyrights, but the package on offer included buildings, a recording studio, and some studio equipment, and a life insurance policy on Paul McCartney.
What the hell?
Northern Songs had taken out insurance policies on all of its principal owners, a common business practice. That means there was also a policy on John Lennon, and presumably, ATV collected that when Lennon was tragically assassinated in 1980. McCartney reportedly made offers to ATV over the years, but according to those close to the Jackson-ATV negotiations, he was not a serious bidder recently. McCartney wanted his own songs, but perhaps was not willing to pay for thousands of other copyrights in the ATV catalog. The Beatles' portion of the collection alone was estimated by one source to be worth about 2/3 of the purchase price. Previously, Paul's people once told one of the ATV officers that their client was interested in buying the copyrights, but that he didn't want to go through lengthy negotiations. They said, in effect, "You go out and get your best offer, and we'll pay 10% more." So, when Michael showed up, knowing he's a friend of Paul's, ATV suspected his bid is just a way for Paul to avoid paying the extra 10%. It took a long time to convince ATV that Michael was in fact acting on his own. Once the deal was finally complete and the news hit the press, McCartney recalls that, quote, "Someone rang me up and said, 'Michael's bought your songs.' I think it's dodgy to do things like that, to be someone's friend and then buy the rug they're standing on." Michael tried to phone McCartney and discuss the matter, but every time he did, Paul hung up on him. Finally, Michael ultimately said, "Paul's got a real problem, and I'm finished trying to be a nice guy. Too bad for him. I get the songs, and that's the end of it." The impact. As soon as Michael made the purchase, he and his representatives investigated ways to make it pay off for him. He hired people to develop an anthology series and 4 films using the Beatles' music. He also planned to produce musical greeting cards and music boxes. But when he licensed the song Revolution to Nike for a sneaker ad, he obtained Yoko Ono's consent. but not Paul McCartney's. In fact, McCartney, like many Beatles fans, was incensed because he felt Michael was cheapening the music. In the end, McCartney had to accept Michael's decision. Quote, "I have no question of him owning it. It was perfectly for sale, fair, square, and all above board." But when Michael Jackson licensed the song All You Need Is Love to Panasonic for $240,000, McCartney contacted him and told him he was going too far. But from Michael's point of view, he felt that by using the Beatles' songs in commercials, he was enabling the music to reach a new generation of fans who will buy the Beatles records in the future. Quote, "Well, I don't like the idea that Michael Jackson is the only guy in the world who gets to sit in judgment as to which Beatles songs can be used in commercials," Paul countered. "He's drawn up a list. I don't see how he should have that power." Paul McCartney said he had hoped that All You Need Is Love would remain an anthem of the 1960s, not become a jingle for, quote, "a friggin' loudspeaker system. And I also don't want Good Day Sunshine to become an Oreo cookie," he complained, which I understand he's done. I think that's real cheesy. I don't think Michael needs the money. I don't. And Yoko doesn't either.
Yeah.
In 1990, Paul and Michael met to discuss what Paul called this problem. McCartney recalled the conversation. "I put it to him this way. When we signed our deal, John and I didn't even know what publishing was. We thought songs were like the air. Everyone owned them. These days, even kids know better than that."
Yeah.
Last year, Yesterday passed the 5 million plays mark in America, which no other song has ever done, not even White Christmas. But no one has ever come up to me and said, "Hey man, I really think you need a bonus. You've done great for this company."
Yeah.
So what the hell is going on? You mean I've got to be content for the rest of my life to be on this deal I signed when I was a fresh-faced 20-year-old? Michael acted as though he didn't understand what Paul was saying, so Paul spelled it out for him. Quote, "I wanted him to recognize in the deal that I'm a big writer for this company that he now owns," McCartney recalled. Michael told Paul that he didn't want to hurt anyone, and McCartney said he was happy to hear that. Michael promised that he'd try to work something out for the former Beatle. The next day, John Eastman, Paul's attorney, telephoned John Branca and told him that Paul and Michael had agreed to renegotiate a higher writer's royalty for his songs. Branca checked with Michael. Quote, "Heck no, I didn't tell Paul that," Michael said. "He's not getting a higher royalty unless I get something back from him in return." Branca passed Michael's decision on to Paul's attorney. Quote, "Then we'll sue," Eastman threatened.
What the
"Hey,
hell?
be my guest," Branca told him. A former employee of Branca's recalled that when Branca told Michael that Paul might sue, Michael scoffed. Quote, "Let him sue. Meanwhile, go license some more songs, Branca. Let's go out there and make some money. Let's run this thing like a business." An associate of Michael's previously stated, quote, "Privately, Michael's feeling is this. Paul McCartney had multiple chances to buy the company, but he was too cheap to spend the money.
Yeah.
Mind you, Paul is said to be the richest entertainer in the world. The man is worth about $560 million. His royalties in 1 year comes to $41 million.
What the hell?
As Mike told me, if he didn't want to invest $47.5 million in his own songs, then he shouldn't come crying to me now."
He makes a big point.
Yoko Ono was pleased that Jackson had acquired Northern Songs and called it a blessing. Speaking in November 1990, Ono stated, quote, "Businessmen who aren't artists themselves wouldn't have the consideration Michael has. He loves the songs. He's very caring." She added that if she and McCartney were to own the songs, there would certainly be arguments. Ono explained that neither she nor McCartney needed that. Quote, "If Paul got the songs, people would have said, 'Paul finally got John.' And if I got them, they'd say, 'Oh, the Dragon Lady strikes again.'"
That's true. Makes sense.
Later dealings. After many years, Paul McCartney was asked about the subject again, and he told the New York Post in 2006 that he'd resented Jackson for the wealth that Lennon McCartney's songbook had brought him. McCartney would often complain about having to pay every time he performed his songs like Hey Jude and Yesterday. When the world was stunned by Michael Jackson's sudden death in 2009, many new headlines involving the Beatles' catalog emerged, sparked by a rumor that Jackson intended to, in his will, return the song's rights back to McCartney. However, Paul McCartney said there was never any arrangement. Quote, "The media came up with this idea that Michael Jackson was going to leave his share in the Beatles' songs to me in his will," McCartney said. "It was completely made up. The report is that I am devastated to find that he didn't leave the songs to me. This is completely untrue. I had not thought for 1 minute that the original report about the will was true. In fact, Jackson may scarcely have had any of the Beatles' back catalog left. Reports have shown that by the time of his death, Jackson had sold all but 5% of his remaining 25% share of the now merged Sony ATV catalog in an attempt to improve his financial situation during his later years. Since Jackson's passing, McCartney says his resentment has faded with time. Quote, "I got off that years ago. It was something for a while I was very keen on, and you can see why. Naturally. But these sort of things can eat you up." McCartney admitted that he remained hurt over the acquisition, but spoke highly of Jackson nevertheless, calling him a massively talented boy man with a gentle soul. "I feel privileged to have hung out and worked with Michael." Thank you for watching The Detail. Check out our channel for more Michael Jackson videos and also visit our MJ store by clicking our link in the description. We'll see you next time.
All right, guys. Yeah, so shout outs to The Detail. Yeah, they are responsible for this video. And I have to say, this video does an excellent job, of breaking down the main reason why, the main reason for their falling, Michael Jackson and then Paul McCartney, the whole issue over, music rights. Who knew that, business could drive, such a wedge, between the two artists, who had such a great chemistry on screen. It's one thing to collaborate artistically, but when it comes to owning rights to some of the biggest in music in history, that's a whole different ballgame. You can really see why Paul felt betrayed when Michael bought the Beatles catalog. Personally, what I love about this video is how it didn't just present the drama. It gave context to their friendship, and how things soured. It's crazy to think that Michael Jackson went from being a fan of Paul McCartney and the Beatles to making what seemed like a purely business decision that created lifelong tension. It's also highlights how the music industry works behind the scenes, especially when money and legacy are involved. Personally, this is one of those stories that leave you thinking: can business and friendship really mix in the world of music? The layers of respect, ego, and financial ambition, to me, makes it so complex. This video definitely does a great job balancing all that information and giving you a clearer picture of why these two legends drifted apart. Honestly, it makes me listen to their collaborations in a whole new light now. What about you guys? Did you know about the feud between Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney before watching this? Please let me know your thoughts down the comment section. But it was so bad how things turned out. Wow. So yeah, let me know if you want us to check out more videos such as this one. Definitely coming through with videos like this. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me to edit the video. You're so loved, so appreciated on here. My name is Philip, and on to the next video. You guys take care, stay safe, peace out.